Okay, I'm going to talk to you now for a few minutes about Computer Mediated Communication, CMC. Okay, and a useful question to ask here is, well, why would organisations introduce it? And the answer is, of course, that they think they're going to get net benefits from it. They think they're going to get some kind of benefits from it. Otherwise, why would you introduce it? And they might realise there's some costs associated with it, but overall, there will be this kind of clear net benefit. What do I mean by CMC, Computer Mediated Communication? Perfectly good question. A few years ago, the lecture on this, rather than being called CMC, was called email, because email represented the vast majority of computer mediated communication that was taking place. Things like discussion boards and stuff have been around for quite a few years as well, but there wasn't a huge usage of them. But more recently, instant messaging, IM or chat as you might want to call it, sort of more web-based discussion boards, video conferencing and stuff have come in. More recently still, we've got the introduction of things like blogs, voice over IP internet protocol, wikis and other types of Web 2.0 stuff. And kind of the ultimate way perhaps of having computer mediated communication in some ways now might be to actually go into the so-called metaverses. So for example, big companies like IBM will have places on Second Life islands. So some companies are actually having communication systems and workers are talking to each other actually in these completely virtual worlds. Okay, and again, it's a very early stage to see what the key advantages are of this or not. So these are all kind of valid areas to look at, all these things I've mentioned, but you might choose to focus on certain areas. Okay, so if for example you turn up to the Web 2.0 lecture and you're particularly interested in that, there are certain aspects of Web 2.0 that you can bring in, and I'll mention them shortly. If you were particularly keen on the intranets and extranets lecture, there are certain aspects of it that you could bring into this topic. Okay. Email. Okay, email is a good area to focus on. Why is it a good area to focus on? Well, it's a useful anchor for all the discussions you might have about different types of computer mediated communications. Email's been around for quite a few years now. In fact, it's been around for several decades. So we can see a couple of things. We can see how the technology has changed over time, right? And that gives us some good examples to draw out lessons for other technologies. And also, we can see how its usage has changed over time, and how in some instances its use has been abused within organisations, and then how organisations have responded to those problems. Okay, so it gives you a nice focused area to look at, and there are lots of examples that you can look at from that. You don't have to, but I would recommend that you do it and then combine it with some other technologies. And it's one of the original killer applications that drove the development and the adoption of the internet and World Wide Web by many organisations and individuals. As I said, if you look at the lecture notes, do a quick search on the web, there are lots of examples around. And people still don't seem to lose the lessons. So some of the examples that I give in the lecture notes are a few years old, but there are lots of very topical things that are raised in the lecture and are brought back in since. So, a quick search, whether it's looking at Claire Swires or you're looking at American congressmen sending messages to people that are inappropriate, whatever it is, lots of stuff out there to choose from. In terms of how you might, characterise the benefits of some of these technologies, then it's the things that, they're fast, cheap, reliable, they're flexible and scalable compared to many of the other options. Things like email, for example, allows you to communicate one-to-one or one-to-many. There's a degree of authentication there, and login and tracking of mails and stuff, and tracking of exchanges of documents and information and discussions. The fact that we can use it to store data, I can email myself, I can send myself file attachments and use it as a way of transferring data around, that they can handle multimedia attachments and stuff these days. So it's a very flexible and useful system. But what kind of problems might arise? Well, there's predictable problems to some extent and the unpredicted problems. So we might predict things like, disruption to the workforce. So you bring a new system in, it changes the way that people work, it puts kind of new stress into the working environment and stuff. Many people have got used to email now. It's deeply embedded in organisations, but when it first came in, this is something that people had to learn to cope with, this entirely new technology. And whilst email may now be something that's kind of everywhere and we accept it, then think about the impact that instant messaging or using blogs or wikis or whatever may also have within organisations when people have got to learn how to deal with this stuff. And then it's when people took advantage of it, and there were certain problems with this type of technology that come up. Some of it is simply that, you know, we use it's because it's for all the characteristics that make it very positive. At the same time, it's leading to things like information overload. You know, there are far too many emails and stuff. But then there's also the problem of kind of malicious spam that comes in from outside organisations, that it provides a gateway to viruses and stuff, that people are using email to send jokes around, to arrange their private life. This has caused lots of legal problems, as you'll see from the lecture notes, okay? So 10 reasons why, you know, beer is better than women, or whatever it happens to be. I send my joke around, it offends someone, this causes legal problems. I'm going very quick through this, of course, because of the limit on the video length that I've got. Use examples to illustrate your point. This is an area where there's an abundance of examples, and more examples are appearing almost daily, okay? So use your examples and make sure that your example supports the specific point that you're making. That would be really useful. As I said, the downside to things like email and other types of computer mediated communication are the way that it can get misused, so you end up with legal issues which can lead to lawsuits. And the fact that organisations are having to adopt what they're doing, so we might have acceptable use policies and things in now that says you can only mail in your designated lunch hour, you can't mail at all, you can't send pornographic mail, whatever it happens to be, okay? Just to control things like the legal liabilities that organisations may face by failing to protect their other employees if I'm sending around lots of abusive email, or simply to make me more productive. I'm there at work to work, not to be emailing my friends football results, jokes, etc, etc. And it's the same problems of instant messaging, being able to access the web with no restrictions, etc. You know, potentially it could be very costly to my productivity, okay? One of the things to bear in mind is this notion that an ongoing, it's kind of, you know, lots of different changes going on, and that organisations are trying to benefit from these technologies and at the same time manage them in such a way that they don't suffer the downside. So most organisations could not run without email now, but you have to manage it correctly in order to minimise the downside of it, the fact that people send too many trivial mails, people may send, you know, annoying or upsetting mails, we get lots of spamming, it provides a doorway to viruses into the organisations, and all these kind of problems that you should be familiar with having done the module, okay? And the essential characteristics of email, which are its strengths, are also its weaknesses. So the fact that it is very cheap and reliable and efficient and you can send lots of mails, you know, has led to this problem with spamming, for example. Okay, the fact that you can put attachments to it and put in active hyperlinks and stuff, it also means it's a great way to distribute viruses and worms and all other kinds of problems. Which is one of the reasons that some companies are moving away from email onto different technologies. The other thing about email, of course, is that email isn't instant, okay? So again, some organisations, you imagine that I'm working as a stockbroker, so I need real-time updates. I'm going to use instant messaging or chat to talk to my colleagues rather than email because of the delays that I may get if the email service is busy. Think around issues as well about being able to mail from mobile devices, such as the BlackBerry, and this idea that, you know, that we're always connected as part of a workplace, which is an interesting thing to do, and possibly, you know, some of the Web 2.0 things coming in. So again, people may blog on an official company blog, and it's a great informal way to get information out that you want to put out as a company, but at the same time you may find employees are blogging on their own blogs completely unofficially. That may let out company secrets, it may bring the reputation of the company into disrepute. All the things which I would challenge, by the way, but you'll again lots of good examples about this. Okay, so you can look up information. But essentially, where things like blogs or instant messaging or other types of technologies are coming in, although the particular problem solutions, so actually it's the underlying characteristics and the responses to it, be they technical responses or legal or kind of bureaucratic responses like new company rules and regulations, okay, that you can often sort of see that there's the same essential thing going on there, although the actual specifics may change. As I said, lots of good examples. Don't forget the future just happened. You can still see it online. We watched the video clip, it's still up online. Look at the VLP for links to it. The Monica Lewinsky section where she found the email coming back to haunt her. That kind of thing. So lots and lots of useful stuff there. Okay, got to stop now, about to run out of time. Bye.